The number of kids in New York City foster care has dropped dramatically in the last 2 decades, from 45,000 to 9,000. It's a welcome development, but there are some times, of course, when removing a child from his or her family is unavoidable. That was the case for our next guest, who entered the foster care system at 16. What happens to children who are placed in foster care as older teenagers? And what is it like to age out of the system with no familial support to fall back on? Here to talk about this is Zinusile Kumbula, a.k.a. Chef Z, foster care alumnus and chef owner of New York's first African taco pop-up. Chef Z, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Would you tell me just a little bit about how you ended up in the foster care system?
I moved here in about 2009 to live with my mom and my, back then, stepdad.
Mm-hmm. Where did you move from?
I moved from Zimbabwe.
Okay.
Yeah, so I lived with them for a couple of months, and then due to a series of unfortunate events that included domestic violence, child abuse, I ended up in the foster care system.
And what did that look like for you? Were you placed in a individual foster home? Were you in a group home?
I started off in a group home, and then I transferred over to about another 2 foster homes.
2 foster homes. And I think when most people think about the foster care system, they think of children, like young kids. But you entered the system when you were 16. Can you tell me a little bit about what that was like?
For myself in particular, it was challenging simply because I had been raised all my life in a different country, living my life differently, and we had different ways of life. And then you move here, you're taken away, or you cannot live with your family, and you end up being placed in a home where there's other children that come from different backgrounds as well. So it's very difficult to find yourself within, but while you're still without, because you feel like an outsider, and then you have these people around you who are supposed to be your family, and they're not really your family.
Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about some of the particular challenges that might face children who are immigrants to this country, as you mentioned, who were raised in different cultural contexts, and now they find themselves in an American family. Talk to me about some of those obstacles.
For me, for the most part, it would probably be the cultural shock. The way people are spoken to here is different from the way that people are spoken to back home. And then personally, my challenge was living with the stigma of being in foster care. How do I tell my friends? How do I tell my family back home? We don't even have foster care back home, so how do you even start to begin to explain to someone else that you're in foster care if they don't even know what it is?
Right. My family's Chinese, and I know that the idea of foster care is very alien because if somebody can't take care of their kid, there's always family around who raised that child. Is it similar in Zimbabwe, or was that part of the stigma that you're talking about coming up against?
Absolutely. It's definitely that because, we're all human and life happens and it's like different shapes. So there are situations back home where parents may not be able to be there for their children, so they end up going to an aunt's house or some grandma's house. You'll always have a home.
I'm curious about as well, at 16, you're almost an adult. You're forging your own identity. What is it like at that age then to find yourself in the system and perhaps having to live with a family who has different expectations?
For the most part, it was a matter of me standing up for myself and realizing that at that time I'm the only person that I have. So whether it was within a foster home or back in the same house with my mom and my my ex-stepdad, I always tried to advocate for myself, and even leaving the home with my mom and my stepdad, I ended up at some point opting to get into foster care, then go back to a negative situation. So I've always tried to do what is best for myself at the best level that I can. And I think that's how I managed to just go through it while I was still a youth.
And tell me about how you came to food.
Ooh la la. I started cooking with my grandma while I was young. I had asthma growing up, so I couldn't be very active. So while the other kids were playing outside, I was inside with my grandma cooking. I developed a love from cooking then, and then once I moved here, once in a while I'd cook in different foster homes or the group home, and people were very receptive to the food. And I'm like, okay, you guys like the food, it's okay, I just like the food. And then I went through like a quarter life crisis where I was like, what am I gonna do with my life?
That's normal, by the way, just so you know.
Oh yeah, so I ended up dropping out of an accounting program at Pace University, and I picked up some pots and some pans. I started catering at different events, and we're here now making tacos.
And you got a scholarship to attend culinary
Yes,
school.
I did. So it wasn't really culinary school. The scholarship was for hospitality management. So thanks to CCAP, I've graduated with a diploma in hospitality management. The cooking is really something I've taught myself through the tools of YouTube and Google.
Can't underestimate them. And the power of your grandmother. Tell me something that you learned to cook from her.
Chicken, a roasted chicken. She'd take it and stuff it with different veggies. So the aromas of the veggies would sink into the meat, and then the juices of the meat would cook the vegetables. So you'd eat both and kind of taste the same thing while all of it is completely different. You'd pick up a carrot and it kind of tastes like chicken. And if you bite into the chicken the right way, you'll taste some carrots too.
And was your grandmother from Zimbabwe?
My grandma was from Zimbabwe, yes.
What is her cuisine like? If I go to Zimbabwe, what type of food am I eating?
So you'd probably eat what we call ischwala. It is a cornmeal dish, very similar to grits and polenta, but much better. We eat it with stewed kale or stewed collard greens and a little bit of meat.
And when was the first time that you had a taco?
Oh my goodness.
You're like, it was a crisp Tuesday morning.
I think I probably had my first taco. I've been here 9 years. I'd say maybe 6 or 7 years ago.
And what did you think?
They were interesting. It was this handheld little thing with meat and tomatoes and onions. For me, it kind of reminded me of home because every time we cook out, we'll eat fried meat, which is like barbecued meat, but much better, with the ischwala and salsas like tomatoes, onions, cucumbers. So those flavors alone reminded me of back home, and I'm like, oh wow, it's actually the same thing because tortillas are made out of cornmeal, so it's essentially the same meal. So this is where the Taco Africana aspect came from, where I could tell people we eat food from the same sources, maybe a little bit differently, but it's really all the same food.
Got it. So this is not necessarily like fusion, like a lychee teeny at your favorite like Asian fusion restaurant. This is actually an homage to the ways in which Mexican cuisine and African cuisine are quite similar in some ways.
Absolutely, and I don't just stick it to Mexico and Africa. There's some tacos that I've done with this taco actually in particular. The sauce on the shrimp is popular in South Africa, but it originated in Portugal. It's called peri peri.
Sure.
So this is more of like an African base, but with flavors from all over the world.
So this is a peri peri shrimp.
Yes.
And there's a cauliflower as well, yes?
Absolutely.
Can you tell me about that one?
So the cauliflower has been steamed and then sauteed in the same sauces and spices as the shrimp. So you'd bite into it and get the same flavors you'd get, but without eating the shrimp.
And I see turmeric here. Is turmeric one of the spices in the marinade or in the spice blend?
In the jollof spice, I do add a tiny bit of turmeric, yes.
Okay. And so tell us about the taco truck. Where can we find it? How do we eat your delicious food?
Taco truck was launched last November. We'd been in business for about 2 months, and then it got cold, really, really cold outside. And my new business, I'm still learning that. I just saw the numbers declining, and it didn't make sense for me to stay open throughout the winter. So what we've done, we've closed the truck for the winter to focus more on indoor events, and then once spring comes, we're also retouching up the truck and getting a bigger one to launch again. So we'll have an app and a website where people would easily find us. And, you get these really cool food trucks of mobile food units that travel all across the city, and you don't know where to find them sometimes. So the app that we're working with will have a GPS locator to tell people where we are.
Very cool. And you give a portion of your proceeds to people in foster care, to foster care programs?
Absolutely. There's 3 different organizations I give back to. For now, it's Graham Wyndham. Obviously, in foster care agency, they helped me go to school and they helped me with my life. The second one is called Impact Network. It helps children in Zambia get educational materials and gives them a little bit of counseling and mentorship through their careers. And then the last one is Trevor Noah Foundation. I saw his show recently on Netflix and it inspired a movement within me. I made a taco after him completely, and proceeds from that taco goes back to the Trevor Noah Foundation.
What is the Trevor Noah taco?
It's called the Niga. It is a plantain tortilla with watermelon butter, fried jollof chicken, and fried crispy kale.
Ooh, I've never heard of watermelon butter, but I want to try it. Has Trevor Noah had the taco?
Not yet. We're
Okay,
getting
Trevor Noah, if you're out there, go find this taco, eat it, tweet about it.
Absolutely.
Chef C, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you for having me.